Hi, good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank you for joining us this evening at our parent workshop series. Tonight's workshop entitled Building Resilience and Exploring Coping, or I'm sorry, Promoting Coping Skills and Building Resilience is going to be presented to us by the Gooding Wellness Group. And obviously, we like to use these workshops as an opportunity to provide families with some information as to how to support their children navigate various challenges. And as you can imagine, in what we've all been through collectively over the last 2 years or so. As a father of four myself, I know I'm always looking for a few different tricks and tips as to how to help my children cope with everything that's been thrown at them. And so I'm excited to have Mr. Gooding and Miss Ross here with us tonight to walk us through some different things that we as parents can do to help our children to face with, just come to grips with all of the different stressors and challenges that they find themselves faced with day to day. So with that being said, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Gooding and Miss Ross, and please, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much, Sean. And thank you, Lauren and Sean, for the invitation. This is a real pleasure to be here. We have spoken at several school districts across the island in the past, but we have never had the opportunity to speak with you guys here at East Williston. So we are excited to be here. My name is Gordon Gooding. I am the executive director and the founder of the Gooding Wellness Group. We are a private practice in Cold Spring Harbor, a group of therapists, many of whom also work in school districts. So work with kids who are on the elementary level, work with kids in middle school, high school, and beyond. So we have this great clinical team that I can talk to you a little bit more about later on. But just to give you a little bit of background myself, I want to introduce myself and then turn it over to Liana to introduce herself. I've been a social worker for many, many years now. I am also a school social worker, and I've worked in the middle school. I've worked in high schools, elementary schools, and building level roles here in Nassau County. And I have firsthand seen over the last 25 years what families, students, teachers, administrators, all of us have faced. And I think that's been an especially difficult time this past since, I remember the date, March 13th, 2020, when they sent us all home, right? Since that time, it's been especially challenging. So I've had a very unique perspective of being able to work in the schools with children and families, and also have this private practice where we're able to give additional support and see how all the stress and anxiety and inability to cope is really impacted everybody. So that's a little bit about me. I have been doing this for a long time. I have some great people that work with me, and one of them is my colleague here, Liana Ross, and I'm going to introduce you to her a little bit.
Thank you. I'm Liana Ross. I'm the assistant director and clinician at Gooding Wellness, and I've been with Gooding since November 2020, but I've been in the field since 2015. And I've done a lot of work around working with adolescents and their families in regards to whether it's utilizing substances. I am a licensed mental health counselor, but I also specialize in addiction, and I'm credentialed alcohol and substance abuse counselor. So I have done a lot of work around with the family members of someone who is struggling with substances, and seeing not only just the struggles of everyday life, whether it be with school or work or peers, but like Gordon was saying, the difficulties when it comes to COVID in the last couple of years, and just so many aspects that are around that. And I've had some work with people who struggle with trauma and mood disorders like depression and anxiety, which I think a lot of us have experienced in the last couple of years. And I'm really looking forward to talking more about this and kind of sharing some really helpful coping mechanisms that I think could help everyone.
So, Sean, would you mind if I shared our screen over here?
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
Oh, I didn't know if you had to turn something off or whatever. I'm still. All right.
You should be able to bump me. If not, let me know.
All right. How's that? That works. Okay. Isn't it funny that it's been 2 years of doing virtual meetings, and every time it works, I still get excited. Like, so just to give everyone a little overview, like I said, we are, a work school based, also in a private practice here. To give you a little overview tonight, we want to talk a little bit about what stress and anxiety is. We want to talk a little bit about the differences of it. We want to talk a little bit about what we see both as and in the schools, and also as in a private setting, of how difficulty and how some of our young people are coping, and the problems that come with that, some of our unhealthy coping skills that kids are relying on. And then finally, we really hoping to spend a bulk of our time really talking about how do we promote some really healthy and positive coping skills. It's very easy to say, don't do this. In the schools, you always hear teachers say, it's easy to say, don't do this, but let's give them something to do, right? I always like to preface these kind of talks with, the slides are a little geared towards our high school, so I'm not sure where everyone's kids are here tonight. But I truly believe all of what we're going to be talking about tonight applies to all of us. I think it applies to you if you're in third grade. I think it applies to you if you're a little bit older like me. So, so with that, I'm just going to we're going to jump right in and hopefully move right along. The first thing we wanted to talk about tonight is really, there is a difference between stress and anxiety. Liana, maybe you can just kind of start us off a little bit about stress, and I'll lead into some of what we think about anxiety.
Sure. So stress is something I think a lot of us know very well, and it's a normal part of life, and it's hard to get away from, which is okay. And stress could be seen as, let's say you have a really stressful exam coming up, whether it be the SATs or regions like we all love, or a job opportunity, an interview, when we feel maybe the tightness in our chest or that little fluttering in our stomach. And the big difference between stress and anxiety is that with stress, after that, maybe the test is done or the interview is over, the stress dissipates. So we kind of come back down to earth until maybe something else might happen, and we have stress around it. So stress is a very normal part of life, and it's just a matter of severity, right? Like stress might be mild or moderate, and as Gordon talks more about anxiety, that might be something that's more severe. So stress can also lead to feelings of a lack of motivation. It could be irritability. We might feel like we just don't want to talk to anyone, and we're just so, what's the word? Kind of like obsessed with something that's going on in our life, whether it's that stressful exam that's coming up, or it's hard to really focus on anything else. But like I said, the big difference is that stress dissipates and it is more short term. So, Gordon, if you want to go ahead and share a little bit about anxiety.
Yeah, and where this all, listen, stress, I would say, is we all have it. If we were all in a room together, I said, who's experienced stress in the last few weeks? And every time I do that, everyone's hand goes up, right? I mean, it's no stranger to any of us. And then we're going to talk a little bit, some of it's not a bad thing. The anxiety comes in, which is a little bit different, because where Liana talked about, it's a short-term reaction or physical, and it is a physical and emotional reaction to a stressful situation. So if there's a job interview, that is a stressful situation, and that your pupils dilate, your heart beats a little faster, your blood rushes. There's a physical reaction to all that. What happens after that interview passes, or after that test passes, or after that presentation passes, anxiety will sometimes stay there, and it will drag out. And that's where we have these intrusive thoughts that go on and on. Well, maybe I should have said this, or maybe I should have replayed that. It is bringing that short-term stress. It makes it prolonged and in a more drawn out way. I always give the expression of, if something happened during the day and I go home and put my head on the pillow and I'm replaying that over and over, there's anxiety, right? And anxiety is not, necessarily bad, but it can be problematic once it starts to interfere with our functioning, with our ability to sleep, with our ability to connect with our loved ones, with our ability to perform our jobs. And those are the real big differences between stress and anxiety, and it's something we all have. So when we talk about building these coping skills, again, this is something we all have to deal with, and we all are currently dealing with, right? No one got through these last 2 years without having to find some ways to deal with and manage these things. So short term, long term, very similar physical reactions to the body. And what happens though also is the anxiety, the perception of stress when there is none, and I think that's a big distinction here. That short impact to our body, it rises and goes down, but with anxiety, it stays for a while, and it can have real health implications for us, mental and physical. So moving on, when we talk about stress and anxiety, what are our young people facing? We're all here and we have young people in our houses, or we're around them, and we have ourselves. We know that there's so much they're facing. Prior to March of 2020, I could probably spend a whole hour talking about some of the challenges they're facing. Just the physical and hormonal changes to start with are huge, especially when we're talking about our adolescents, our middle school, our high school kids, where there's so much going on. There's so much of their identity that's changing. There's so much physiological changes that are uncomfortable and odd, and mood swings, and all of these things are just perfectly normal. That's a challenge for adolescents, right? Now we sprinkle that and put in a little more school demands, right? The intensity. I have two, full disclosure, I have two amazing daughters. Both are in college, and they recently graduated high school. One in 2020, one in 2021. So right in the midst of this pandemic, trying to relearn how to do these schooling, remote learning, and all these different demands is tremendous. And not to mention just the general pressures of what kids face, and how we have to kind of strive and keep going forward and keeping up with academic and social needs. There is a normaling of substance abuse these days. Just this past year, marijuana is now legal in New York State, right? So, and I'm not here to criticize it or complain about it, but there is this perception that if you use substances, you'll relax. And that's a message that we have to really be mindful of and careful of. Anytime there's a rough day, I hear people tell me as I leave the school, Gordon, hope you'll go home and have a glass of wine, right? Well, maybe I should go home and going for a run, or taking my dog for a walk, or getting out, and then people mean well, so I'm not trying to criticize it, but there is this normalization that when we're stressed, we should face substances. Clearly, the social media had a huge impact on our young people. This self-comparison to unrealistic expectations, whether it's body image, whether it's social image, whether it's I'm doing the best thing in the world on my vacation and you're not. It really sets up these false narratives. I always say no one ever shares about their bad day on Instagram. It's no one ever shares a bad meal on Instagram. It's always the good stuff, right? So it really gives sometimes our kids, and even us as adults, this warped sense of what is normal and what our expectations are, because we start doing that comparison. Peer pressure, it's been with us forever. I think it's just been intensified in terms of how kids are facing it, because now the social media has really exacerbated that so much. I have lots of young people that come into our offices, and it used to be when they go home, they felt a little isolated, and they felt a little left out of things at school, but they go home and they're on Instagram and they're seeing all their friends are doing something and they weren't invited. And whether that was purposeful or not purposeful, that increases anxiety, stress, feelings of loneliness, and obviously it can definitely trigger feelings of depression and self-worth. Family stressors, I can't emphasize this enough as someone who's, again, been in the schools and been in this private practice sector during this past 2 years. We talk about our kids with stress. The families that have gone, whatever we all have gone through as families, of trying to hold down jobs and teach from our living rooms while our kids are on other computers trying to teach them. It's exhausting, not to mention the financial implications that have happened over the last few years. All of these things play into increased anxiety, increased stress. Because I always say stress is contagious and anxiety is contagious. So when the family's stressed, our young people are going to feel it too. And finally, when we touched a little bit on social media, this excessive use of technology. This is something, I'm a little bit older. We didn't have this, a lot of us growing up, and as a parent trying to watch my kids on these devices all the time, we're a little bit at a disadvantage because we can't relate to it. We didn't grow up with it, right? So this use of excessive technology, again, increases our children's stress, increases anxiety, increases symptoms of depression, anxiety, and all these things are normal part of growing up. We just need to find a good way and a healthy way to support our kids and ourselves with all these demands that are on us.
So being that these are all of the issues that these kids are going through, normal part of life, what are some of the coping skills that they might be using? And there just might be coping skills that they may really know for themselves, right? Like without some outside influence. So whether it be isolation, as we can see if there's a lot of pressure at school, anxiety, stress, depression, kind of getting into our own minds and staying up in our room is very common. Then we can see it, like Gordon was saying, with social media, right? Like it's kind of their way to disassociate and kind of be in this other world if maybe their own world is a little stressful right now. Marijuana, as Gordon was saying, the legalization, I think it's become maybe it's easier to justify for a lot of these kids, and it's been normalized for a lot of these kids, and we just have to find other coping tools outside of these. Another one is video games, and this can also be really healthy for a lot of times, whether it be for socializing, competitiveness, but any of these could be on a whole spectrum, right? So what is the motive here with any of these coping skills that they might be using? Is it to disassociate? Is it to isolate? Is it to just kind of like be on their own and not be able to express the way they're feeling? And then we have, whether it be excessive shopping, right? Like with the social media comes with comparison. Maybe it comes with difficulty with body image. And a lot of the kids are trying to get the next best thing or be up with what everyone else is getting. So we kind of feel like needing that instant gratification will make us feel better. And so we're grappling at anything that we might see, whether it be on social media, on the internet, or at the mall, at something that we know we need to have. Another one could be binge eating or emotional eating. And again, nothing wrong with this, but it's just what's our motive? What's the severity? A lot of times I like to suggest to people, like, let's just add some other tools to the toolbox, right? Like, okay, food is one of them, right? Because food is emotional, but let's add some other coping tools. And with the peer pressure does delve into the drinking and the drugging, right? Like it doesn't even have to be that quote unquote typical, like, oh, come on, man, have a drink or have whatever. But just seeing other friends around us doing it, like that's a really hard situation to be in. And kind of teaching these kids how to, I guess, reflect on what they know they need at that point and how they're feeling and what's going on in the situation. These kids are definitely going through a lot, as kids do in that age. And, we just want to show them healthier coping skills to use.
Right. So, I'm a big Michael Scott fan. So, is stress bad? The answer here is no. The things that Liana was just talking about is how a lot of people and there's nothing inherently bad about some of those shopping and it's when it goes to excessiveness and when it goes to avoiding responsibilities and it impacts other areas of our life, right? So stress, I really feel strongly about this. Stress is not bad. I'm a big believer in resilience. We've just kind of worked that into the title of this workshop. It is my hope that over the past couple of years, all the stress and anxiety and that our young people have gone through will help build that muscle of resilience. You don't lift heavier weights without you don't get stronger without lifting heavier weights, right? So we're all lifting heavier weights during these times of stress, and it gives us that muscle to walk through it. So I don't believe stress is bad. Stress is, stress actually can be very exciting. There is stress that's very healthy for us. We're excited to do something. Tonight was I anxious about this? Maybe a little bit. I was also excited to do it. I haven't really have presented to you to this district at all. So that's a good thing. That prolonged stress, when it switched over to anxiety, that again is where we can have some negative effects, negative ramifications. I wanted to show you this graph, and I'm going to put my next slide up because I happen to just love this. This is a graph that I share with my clients all the time. I share with my kids. I share with teachers. And this is when I say stress is not bad, this is an analogy between our performance and our stress. So without any stress, there is no performance. All right. And there's also no there's no excitement. And we're dead. There's nothing there. We need some stress to increase our performance and to make us feel good about ourselves. When we talk about this bell curve, which is exactly what it is, there is a line between feeling healthy stress, which is kind of like where in that middle line here, where they see the red and the green, you feel energized, you feel focused, you feel work is effortless. A lot of times they call this, in psychological terms, they call this the flow. When you're really doing something you love, it's a little stressful, but it's also like you're loving it, And a lot of our kids, depending on where they are, and their topic of interest, obviously, those of us who like certain topics are going to definitely be more prone to getting into this optimum area than other areas. But these are healthy places to be. Where it doesn't get healthy is once we keep going past that, once the stress goes beyond that. That's when fatigue sets in. That's when exhaustion sets in. That's when ill health and breakdown and burnout sets in. And much as we think we're working harder and there's more stress, our performance actually can go down, right? And our joy, because really, when I look at this performance, there's also, and I have another chart that talks about the positive feelings start to decrease and go down. Anger, resentment, just like it says in the thing, we go from calm to stress to distress. Right? Distress, it's an alarming rate. That's why it's in red, right? That's where we have to be critical. When our kids are being pushed, and I don't mean that directed at anyone in particular, but I think when all of us are pushed to a point, we don't enjoy ourselves anymore, and we're not getting as much done, right? We all have a limit. And I think this past 2 years, what we're seeing is a lot of our young people and our parents and ourselves really have moved into this level where it's so hard to turn some of these things off. It's so hard to turn the social media off. It's so hard to turn the work off. Everyone's got one of these. This thing doesn't quit on us, does it? It always is beeping and blaring and telling us, hey, get in touch with me. So that it keeps that stress level up. And we really have to be proactive. And I like to use the word deliberate, in order to bring down our stress and to get our stress back into a normal range where we, again, feel energized, focused, and the work feels good and effortless. And we're enjoying our lives. So first thing, another office reference, is first coping skill I want to talk about tonight really is, where are you at? Where is mom and dad at, right? I said it before, anxiety is contagious, right? When we are stressed, when we are anxious, it wears off on other people, right? When you see Dwight screaming, it's uncomfortable, right? So think about our kids, our moms and dads, when they see mom and dad just shutting down or screaming or going into their rooms and not coming out, like our kids see all of this, Our mental health is based, a lot of it is based upon what our examples in our life are. When we see our parents coping healthily, is that a word? And in a healthy way, then we are more prone to do that. when we have examples of people abusing drugs or drinking excessively or excessive shopping, or, you know, we have our kids, and listen, as parents, I can be just as guilty with this thing, you know, as sometimes, you know, we're at the table, oh, just let me check one more email before I sit down for dinner, right? That's, you know, that's showing that that I'm being a poor example, that we have to shut these things off sometime. So remember, they watch us. They, you know, we are not alone, and parents are not alone, right? I used to love, my daughters were in the marching band, and we used to love sitting in the crowds, and all of a sudden we talked to a parent I never talked to before, and we're both like, yeah, I'm gonna. My kids' room's like that too. My kids doing that too. Like, there's this connection once, you know. I mean, we talk about, you know, there's like, you know, obviously we know about the Me Too movement, but that expression of Me Too, of somebody sharing a shared experience, is so soothing and so comforting, right? That's what's so powerful about counseling. That's what's so powerful about group counseling, is that you have that connection with someone else that says, hey, you're not alone. And I think we all need to do that, especially during times of stress. We are going to, Liana, we put a link up. Is that the one for supporting
Yeah.
your team?
Yeah, so I just put a link up in the chat. It's a little PDF with some informational points about supporting your stress teen. And we have a few others in regards to teens with marijuana, teens with vaping, that I'll put in there that really correlate to this presentation, because I agree, it's just as much as our kids could be going through something, parents are definitely going through it too, and you all need your support. So and it could probably take a lot from some of these coping skills. So I'll get into some of these coping skills that are some really big ones. I mean, obviously there's so many, but these are just to name a few that I really like to use myself, and also like to work with my clients. And listen, these coping skills could be great for some people, but someone also might hate journaling, and that's okay too. And I always like to say that when life is getting really stressful, we might have to increase our coping skills. And maybe when things are a little bit more calm, maybe we don't need that extra coping skill, and that's okay. And they're all unique to everyone. So one could be journaling. This is really helpful. There are so many prompts, which I'll share more about. Moments of mindfulness, taking some time alone without the phone, without screens, moving our body, having the right fuel to go throughout our day, to go through 8 hours of school or 8 hours of work, connection, and being surrounded with other people that understand what we're going through, or even understand the stress of school these days, and getting enough sleep, which I think is super underrated, and the impact rest has on our day-to-day. So there are so many other coping skills that work for individuals, whether it's playing an instrument, anything that, like Gordon was saying, gives us in that, or makes us feel that flow state. I mean, something for me that I got into was is doing Legos. Like, I love just creating something. I have one right next to me of like the Friends cast, like in the coffee shop, because it's just, it puts me in that flow state. So whatever it could be unique to you.
Yeah. And just like Liana said, you know, I try to talk to our clients about thinking about our coping skills as fitting into one of these three categories: moving, connecting, or nurturance, right? Everything we're going to be talking about tonight, we're going to spend a little time on each couple of specific tools that they can use, but each one of these kind of falls into this category of moving, connecting, and nurturing, right? These are basic things that, if we think about, make us the best mental health builders going around, right? What I think we sometimes struggle with, and I said it before, and I will probably say it a couple more times before this hour ends, is when it comes to building these tools, is being deliberate, right? It's very easy to say, well, I'm going to go for, you know, I walked yesterday when I had home and I had time to, you know, the sun was out and it was warm and I took the dog for a walk. Or yesterday I spoke to my best friend. Or, you know, this last week I went for a massage. But when we're doing it happenstance, it's that self-care happenstance is different than we're saying, you know what, I'm going to make a deliberate effort and to prevent myself from feeling stressed and burnt out and anxious, and make sure movement is a part of my routine. You know, making sure that during my week, I know I'm connecting with certain people, right? But during my week, I know I'm going to get enough sleep. I know I'm going to do something good for myself. I'm going to make that time to make those Legos, which I'm really going to get on that because I loved them as a kid, Leon. All right. So like all the things we're going to kind of go into the next couple of slides really comes down to these, three things of movement, connection, and nurturance. So I'm going to let Liana start with this exercise, which, like our number one.
Yes. So exercise is something I'm definitely passionate about. And when I say exercise, I really like to say movement because it's just moving our body in whatever way that feels good for us mentally and physically. So when we feel anxiety or stress, I think for most of us, it feels like we just have like adrenaline and it's rushing through our body and we just want to move, whether it's our arms or legs, we just like need to move around. I think it's hard to sit still. And that's where movement can be really helpful when it comes to stress and anxiety. So it doesn't have to be running a mile. It can be literally just squeezing and clenching our muscles and doing some progressive muscle relaxation, which is a mindful technique that we can get into. But it can also be up to taking a walk around the block. It could be doing yoga. It could be riding a bike, whatever it may be. It's unique to everyone. And it doesn't even have to be the thing that maybe we play competitively, right? If maybe I run track after school, I always wanted to get into yoga and maybe I'll try that for fun. I think the most important thing here is to find something that we enjoy because that is when we're going to continue it. I think we set ourselves up for not success if we say, I'm going to, I don't know, go swimming. I hate swimming. I'm not going to do it. So I'm going to find something that makes me feel good mentally and physically that also puts me in that flow state that doesn't feel like any effort. That is something that I look forward to kind of just zero in, put the phone down, put the computer down, put the TV away. Just something that where we can kind of feel proud of our body and the different ways it can move. So, yeah.
If I could just jump in, Leanne, I think one of the things I get from parents often is, adolescents and teenagers, there's this natural tendency to go into their rooms, hibernate on their little devices or on their video games. And parents say to me, well, how am I supposed to get them to exercise? And I think that's where as parents, we got to be really creative, right? My daughters love our dogs. So it's like, how do we get them out and let's go take the dogs for a walk. Let's go do this. Or let's go we're going to go to, when we go to the mall, it sounds like cliche. If you go to the mall, you go someplace, park a little further away. Like how to be creative to know especially if our kids are anxious or depressed, we need to find a way to get them moving more. And we all know if you have, especially with little ones, it might be a little, even with little ones, you got to be creative of how do we get them moving a little bit more, but especially with adolescents, because adolescents don't want to be told what to do. It's how can we be creative to say, hey, let's go do this with me, or hey, let's go do that, or why don't you go, pushing on them, trying to be a creative way, because that is a big piece. And so, there's been actually research shows, because I could talk on the subject forever too. There's research that shows that exercise is as beneficial, if not more, than some of these SSRIs that we're putting kids on, and adults, right? There's actually more mental health benefits of exercising than taking some medication. So, exercise. I'm with Liana. Like this is such a crucial tool for our young people. Socialization, connect, right? Movement, connect, socialize. Just like we were saying before, we need to be around people. When we think about this pandemic, this past 2 years, when we talk about, connection, movement, we're in front of the computer screens. We're not moving as much. We're in front of computer screens. We're not socializing. And I was joking before, I like talking before a thing and having coffee and just, hey, well, just kind of riffing a little bit, like that is a normal part of, we're social beings. That's a normal part of life, and we all need that, right? I don't know about you guys, but when I went from not being in school to going back to school and being around my colleagues, it was like, I just smiled, and I saw someone else's smile, and it made me smile, right? That's good for mental health, right? That's connection, that's socializing. Same thing goes with our kids, right? They might have a tendency, my girls were always the same. They fight me all the time. I don't want to go out and do that. And then once you get them out of the house, they're like, oh, we should do this every weekend. And it's like, oh, right? That's what my girls, they're probably still do that too. But socialization, how do we connect with somebody else? And it doesn't have to be a large group. It could just be, have Billy over, have Susie over to go outside and do something, or at least have them come over and play the video games together in the same room, because eventually they'll get tired and have a snack and they're talking. How do we kind of bring them together with other kids, right? That's a big piece of promoting their wellness, and reduces stress, right? Everything, and I've been a victim of that too, of sometimes feeling like I don't want to do something. And then when I go out and do something and see people, and I have people that, see me smile, or I connect with them, man, my mood changes. It just shifts, right? And I've seen that with kids. I've seen that with kids who come into school grumpy and upset, and they've had a bad morning, and they sit down at their desks. The next thing you know, they're whispering and talking to the kid next to them, and their whole mood shifts and raises up, right? And we love this. And that's why in-school learning has been crucial to come back to, right? No matter how we feel about it. That social piece is something we all need. There is a lot of also research showing how, the more happy we are in our relationships, the longer our life is, the more stress reduction, being a part of our community. All these things are just healthy and are great. It also helps us the socialization also can help us with some physical benefits too, memory, concentration. Isolation we're not meant to be this alone. And I think that's part of why this past couple of years have been so tough. So wherever we can, let's get our kids together with other kids as much as safe as possible. And I'll let Liana.
So eating and sleeping, the primary needs for us, as we know as adults, but I think for adolescents and kids can be so easy to kind of like push off to the side, right? And I know for me, when I was in that age, it was like staying up till 12, 1, 2, and it was like no big deal. But then having to get up the next morning to be at school in my desk at 7:30 a.m., I don't know how I did that. And I couldn't imagine what it must have been like if I had a full night of sleep and really good sleep. And kind of going back to that technology piece, I think what I've heard a lot of parents struggle with is getting the child or adolescent to put the phone down, for no electronics before they go to bed. And it's this like back and forth fight with, taking the electronic when they're in their room. And that's a really difficult piece for both the child, adolescent, and the parent. And finding benefits of sleep, finding that, waking up the next morning, having a full night's rest actually can help our clarity, our fatigue, our irritability, and our concentration, right? Like 8 hours of school, 7, 8 hours of school back to back is a lot to cram in a day. So how can we be more mentally alert, and teaching this and kind of finding ways to make it easier so it's not a battle? And this kind of goes with eating too, right? So finding ways to kind of yield positive results when it comes to having a balanced diet, right? I think it's common for kids to rush out the door, go to the bus. It's early, they're rushing, they got up late, they're tired, and just not in the mood for breakfast, which is totally common. But how can we kind of balance our hormones, balance our blood sugar levels? Because if they're not balanced, we're going to drop by the end of the day or by 1 p.m. And it could be helpful to even pack extra snacks for them, even if they don't want it, right? Like just letting them know that they have it in case, because then they have a busy day after school with activities and homework, and just like rest the eating is really important for that clarity, for decreasing fatigue, for just giving them fuel for the whole day. Yeah, and I would suggest probably like 1 hour before bed having this time for ourselves. No electronics if possible. Maybe we can start at like 20 minutes before bed, but kind of taking baby steps to get to enjoy sleep again rather than pushing it off and pushing it off. Or I've seen a lot of parents and kids, cook together to make it enjoyable, to eat something they really like rather than, maybe something they don't that their parent is making.
I was going to say, Liana, just to jump in there real quick, is again, remember that first slide with Dwight. Our kids are watching us.
Mm-hmm.
When we go to bed and we're on this for hours, or we're just eating fast food, or we're just doing, like, they're watching us, right? So it's that's why I keep using the word deliberate. It takes a lot of effort to really make sure we're giving them everything we can in terms of examples.
Definitely.
We're getting a little tight on time, so we're going to try to fly through the next couple ones real quick. Liana, we're going to touch on this one real quick.
Yeah, sure. So journaling, I think it's common for a lot of us to know our kids don't want to tell us everything. So having a private place to share, just write whatever we want, whether it be a gratitude list, what went well for the day, what we want to improve on, but having a place to almost emotionally dump onto could be really beneficial, not just for kids, but for adults as well.
Great. I'm going to just jump ahead a little bit because, listen, each one of these slides we could spend a lot of time on. So we would be remiss if we left this without talking a little bit about mindfulness, right? Mindfulness, big buzzword these days, but it's a tool that all of us really could benefit from, right? And the sooner we start teaching our kids some of these skills of mindfulness, I think the better, right? And again, the sooner our kids see us practicing mindfulness, the better, okay? Mindfulness, for those of you who are not as familiar, really is, I call it the art of non-doing, really. It's about how do we kind of be, right? In a world where we got constant social media, we got constant tests in academics, we got constant pressures for sports, we have all these things constantly coming at us. How do we take time just to stop? I call it, there's a lot of meditation teachers. One of my favorites is Tara Brach, and she calls it the sacred pause, where we just stop. How do we just breathe a little bit? When I was younger, when you went home from school, you weren't around your friends anymore, right? You were around the neighborhood kids, and then went to bed, and you're just playing with your toys or doing all, of course I'm back a long time ago, but to now there's a constant stress, right? There's these social media. We're going home, we're still in school, we're still seeing what all our kids are doing. We're going home, we're still, we're going to bed, and we're still seeing what everybody else is doing out there. We never give our chance a body to just kind of, I look at our shoulders and just, right? Even that pause, and that little moment of silence we just had there, it's like, right? How do we stop? How do we just stop? We're human beings, not human doings, right? Mindfulness is really about how do we kind of pay attention to this present moment we're in without any judgment, right? And see it for what it's worth. As parents, I know we're so stressed getting work done and doing these things, but are we really paying attention to our lives? Right. And I think this is exactly what we all need to practice this. We do think about mindfulness. We do think about sitting in a meditation, but there really is so many ways to practice mindfulness. It's not just sitting on a pillow meditating. For some people it is exercise. Liana may not realize this, but when you do Legos and you're focused only on these pieces, putting them together, that is an act of mindfulness. It's paying attention to one thing at a time without judgment. right? And you know, our kids, we're all pulled in so many different directions. That's a very hard feat in today's world. So I could definitely spend a lot more time on this, but there are ways to do this. There's breathing exercises, there's sports, there's yoga. There are some very, great age appropriate tools out there. I love the Calm app for kids. I love there's a great class. If anyone's interested, we could share it with our information about. It's called Koru Mindfulness, Long Island. It's a couple of great teachers here and they're mental health professionals that teach mindfulness skills and a whole plethora of different ways to practice mindfulness to young people, to high school kids, and to young adults. Right? And this way, when we give them these tools, they don't have to turn to excessive shopping. They don't have to turn to obsessing of relationships or to alcohol or to drugs or to, we have to give them ways to find relief that aren't harmful to them. Right. So how we, and there's certainly like a couple of hours worth of and I've done a couple of hours of presentations on mindfulness. But this is a great tool, and I would really encourage kids and parents to really look into how to do it, whether it's through an app or through different resources online. There's so many great ones. Feel free to reach out to us. If we can't help you in some way, I will certainly point you in a direction of some great resources of how to practice it in your family. And maybe it's something as simple as, let's all the phones go down at a certain time of the night, right? And we have to learn that. Kids have to learn at a young age because that's really hard to do once they're my kids' age and they're 20. They would, bite my head off. But so I want to leave a little bit of time for. We're gonna list some comments and questions, but the last thing I do want to mention this one little part is about when we talk about tools, and it kind of ties in everything. Liana talked about our food and our sleeping. What are we consuming, right? And I mean that from a physical sense, from food. I'm thinking about but also what are we listening to? What are we watching? When we have a long, stressful day, and we go home and we watch Game of Thrones or we watch some highly stressful show. Remember that arch, right? It just brings us over to the red. How do we bring it back down? I have been loved. I have a couple of young clinicians who weren't around when The Office came out. I know we're talking about The Office a lot, but I have a couple of young, and they watch it over. Like it's fun, very soothing. And I love that, find a comedy, find something fun to watch. Right. I mean, I got into stand-up comedy during the pandemic because I couldn't watch all that stuff was just too much. Right. So what are we consuming? And as parents, what are we consuming? What are they watching us do? Right? Are they watching us drink? Are they watching us binge these stressful shows and watching us being stressed out? All of those really kind of play into that. So these are some really good questions I want you to think for yourself. So I don't see a lot of faces, but I would love to, if feel free to, if there are thoughts, if there are questions, if there are comments, I would love if somebody wants to put anything in the chat. Otherwise, I'll go over a little bit of how you can get in touch with us. But does anybody have anything that you, in particular with your child or something that you're seeing that you don't know how to handle or confused with that maybe we can help you with since we have a couple minutes? Okay. Sounds like I live in your house. I have enough stress in my house, but thank you. Yes. Well, that's, what? It's so.
That's me too. Get the connection.
I was just going to say, I thank you, Sharon, for saying that, because that's what we all need as parents. I need to know I'm not alone. I need to know that, right? And all of us as parents, I think we need to know that. I always want it. I love that idea of, I totally get that. And I get it too. Right. And these things are hard to do. I work 2 jobs. I have 2 amazing kids. I have a relationship. again, I'm going to bring up the word. We have to be really deliberate about it, and we have to teach our kids to be deliberate about it, right? Between the commitments these kids get into, whether it's the little ages or high school ages, it's really intensity, and life is intense, which is okay. And we have to kind of deal with life being intense. We also have to deal with, how do I cope with it being so intense? So how do we arm our kids to teach them resilience, to teach them that we can do tough things, and we can take care of ourselves. Yeah. Thank you, Sharon. Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm not looking to anyone to share anything they don't want, but I'm just so glad you're participating and you're here, though. Oops, hold on. I lost my thing. So if there is nothing else, I'll tell you a little bit more about us. Again, we are here in Cold Spring Harbor. We have several clinicians that specialize in young people. We have some that are actually work in high schools and middle schools, and we have some also that work in elementary schools that work with young people. The piece of my practice, our practice, that I am most proud of is, just because like we're here talking to you as parents, is that big part of our practice is we completely believe that it's not just our kids that need the support, right? The parents need it. Right? When we build up our parents and make them strong, they can be stronger for their kids, right? So, just like some people had put in the text and that, knowing you're not alone with that, it's a big piece of this. So, we are available. We do have another service that's online called Long Island Teletherapy, which is just online therapists. And we have, of course, it's my practice, but I couldn't be more proud of the team and people I have on board. They're absolutely fantastic and experts in what they do. Our website is goodingwellness.com or longislandteletherapy.com. Liana put a couple of the of PDFs, which we will also send out to Mr. O'Brien, that maybe we can mail out when you send the links out, Mr. O'Brien.
Absolutely. When I put the video link out to the community, I'll include the links to any of the documents you shared tonight as well.
Yeah.
Great.
So, and on these documents is our website. Please, I know this is a kind of a private setting. It's very, we're here on Zoom, and maybe you wouldn't. If there's questions or if there's something you're stuck with, I love helping people. Just call us or shoot me an email. The youngest age of our group, we go down to 5-year-olds. We're K through whatever. I joke sometimes we're 5 through 105. Anything younger than 5, we have worked with before, but there's a lot of work with the parents there, and all of our kids, there's a lot of work with parents there. But on our websites, there's plenty of we have some, not to brag, we have all these blogs that we have these PDFs for. We have lots of great information. We would love to be a resource for you. Again, Mr. O'Brien, if the East Williston School District ever needs something in person or something else, we welcome to be an opportunity and resource for you. Liana, is anything? I'm talking to you.
No, you pretty much shared a lot. And another good thing that I do love about the practice is that a lot of times, let's say if someone works with the child and maybe I work with the parents, we're able to collaborate as a team. So, no one is alone in this process. We always believe that it's a family type of issue. So we like to kind of deal with the family all at once.
That support, yeah.
Yeah.
So if there's something we can do, we're always here. Please be deliberate with your mental health, though. Really make an effort for you and for your kids. This has been an unprecedented 2 years. We're grateful that you have us here, and please feel free to reach out. I'm going to also put my email, and I'll have Liana put her email in there if anybody wanted to reach out to us directly, and if you can also through our website as well.
That's great. Gordon, Liana, I'd like to thank you both for your time this evening. I'd also like to thank Ms. Lauren Navarra, our Wheatley School social worker, for everything she did to put this night together for us, as well as Ms. Ashley Gleason, our Northside social worker, for joining us here this evening. And of course, to you, the parents, for taking the time out, from your schedule to learn a few different ways that we can help to support our kids. So if you do have any questions, of course, feel free to ask. But then again, thank you all for your time, and have a great evening. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Laura and Ashley, thank you. Sean, thank you.
Thank you.
We will definitely be in touch so